What's going on, everybody? If you are thinking about buying a home in Prince George right now, or if you've moved here for the energy sector projects or healthcare opportunities, or just housing affordability, and you're trying to figure out what the market is actually doing, then this video is going to give you the honest, full picture. Let's get into it. We're going to cover why the Bank of Canada is stuck at 2.25% and what that actually means for your mortgage. We're going to talk about a piece of legislation called Bill C-4 that could literally save a first-time buyer up to $50,000 on a new build. And we're going to address the elephant in the room. The forestry sector is hurting, but the energy economy coming through the city is doing something completely different. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what kind of market you are walking into in 2026 and what the smart money is doing right now. Stick around because the last section, what I call the gap strategy, is probably the most actionable piece of advice I can give a buyer at this exact moment. Let's start with the numbers that control everything. The overnight rate. Right now, it sits at 2.25, which puts your consumer prime lending at 4.45. The Bank of Canada has been holding there since late October 2025. They cut rates through most of last year, and then they just stopped. Why is this? Because they're caught between two opposing forces. On one side, the domestic economy is cooling. We had sluggish demand in late 2025. Bad weather killed retail in early 2026. Keep in mind, consumer spending, aka people buying stuff, is approximately 70% of our GDP in Canada, which is the productivity of our economy. And weak February labor data makes it hard to justify moving rates at all at this point. On the other side, there is genuine inflationary pressure coming from outside of Canada that the bank has zero control over. There is an ongoing conflict involving Iran that has pushed oil prices up, and oil is not just a number at the gas pump, it is a core input cost for almost everything in the global supply chain. When oil goes up, inflation expectations go up, and that pushes bond yields higher. Higher bond yields means higher fixed rate mortgages, regardless of what the Bank of Canada is doing with the overnight rate. Then there are the U.S. tariffs. Right now, steel and aluminum face a combined tariff of 50% coming in from the States. That is not just a lumber problem. That inflationary pressure passes through to Canadian consumers. The Bank of Canada knows it, and it is one of the main reasons that they cannot cut further. The C.D. Howe Institute unanimously called for keeping rates at 2.25% through at least September 2026. Canada's major banks are near unanimous that rates hold through the rest of this year. TD and BMO see rates staying flat through 2027, and RBC and Scotiabank project hikes later in 2026 into 2027. So the cheap money era is over. The pre-pandemic days of sub 2% mortgages are not coming back. The new normal for this cycle is somewhere between 2.25 and 3.25. That is the floor you need to be planning for. Now, this is the section I want existing homeowners to really pay attention to. Right now, approximately 60% of all outstanding residential mortgages in Canada are scheduled to renew across 2025 and 2026. That is not a small wave, that's a tidal shift. The majority of these borrowers locked in 5-year fixed rates at historic pandemic era lows, and now they're coming to the table at high 3s, low 4s, or even higher interest rates. But here is where it gets serious. If you had a variable rate mortgage with a fixed payment, meaning your payment amount did not change when rates went up, you may have accumulated what is called negative amortization. Your payment was not covering all the interest. That shortfall was quietly getting tacked onto your principal balance. At renewal, these mortgages get recast. They get reset to your original amortization schedule at today's rates. For the top 10% of that group, that means a payment increase of over 40%. I am not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it so you can go into your renewal conversation knowing exactly what is coming and not get blindsided by the bank. Now, the flip side, if you have a standard variable rate mortgage where your payment actually moves with the rate, your payments have already dropped about 5 to 7% from the peak because the bank cut 100 basis points last year. So not everyone is in the same boat here. What this has killed is what I call date the rate mentality. That was the idea in 2021 to 2023, where you accepted a higher purchase price, figuring you would just refinance cheap in a couple years. That thinking does not survive a 4.45% prime rate environment. Principal paydown efficiency has dropped roughly 36% compared to the peak market in 2021. That means every dollar of your mortgage payment is doing less work building equity than it was 3 years ago. The smart play in 2026 is to buy at the right price for what you can actually carry right now, not what you hope rates will be in 2 years. That is the shift in mindset that separates buyers who come out ahead in this market from the ones who stretch too far and regret it. Now here's some genuinely good news. On March 12, 2026, Bill C-4 received royal assent. Among other things, it permanently eliminates the 5% federal GST for eligible first-time homebuyers purchasing new builds or substantially renovated properties under $1 million. On a $600,000 new build, that is $30,000 back in your pocket. On a $1 million home, that's a full $50,000. And here is the thing about Prince George. The average single-family benchmark right now sits at around $537,000, as per MLS reported sales to Northern Real Estate Board in December 2025. That means basically every new build in this city falls squarely in that 100% rebate zone, with a few exceptions going over $1 million. Here's the practical comparison though. Take a $600,000 resale home versus $600,000 new build. The resale costs you $600,000, full stop. The new build after GST rebate effectively costs you $570,000. That is a 5% structural discount built into the math before you even negotiate. For a first-time buyer, that changes the equation completely. Bill C-4 also lifted the RRSP home buyers plan withdrawal limit from $35,000 to $60,000. So if you and your partner have both been contributing to your RSPs, you can now pull up to $120,000 combined, tax-free towards your down payment. That is a meaningful jump in purchasing power, especially when you're trying to get that 20% down threshold to avoid CM8C insurance. One important note before you get excited though, is this rebate applies to agreements of purchase and sale entered into on or after March 20th, 2025 and before 2031. So if you have already written an offer on a new build in the last year, go double check your eligibility with your lawyer or mortgage broker. Do not leave this on the table. One more piece of advice from Bill C-4 that does not get talked about enough. It dropped the first marginal federal income tax from 15 to 14%. Now, this might not seem like a huge deal, but for a two-income household, that is up to $840 per year back into your cash flow. It's not life-changing on its own, but in a year where you are covering closing costs, moving expenses, and a new mortgage, it adds up quick. Now let's talk about the local economy, because this directly affects property values and who is buying in Prince George right now. But here's the thing, and this is what I call the Trump paradox. The same U.S. administration that is tariffing our lumber is absolutely dependent on Canadian critical minerals, natural gas, and clean energy. Canada exports $38 billion in minerals to the United States annually. As the U.S. tries to decouple from China for its energy and critical mineral supply chains, they need what runs through this city. The forestry sector is hurting. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. The U.S. softwood lumber dispute has escalated into a full-scale trade war, with combined anti-dumping and countervailing duties now sitting at a crushing 35%. When you add the 10% global tariff imposed in late 2025, BC Interior mills are facing total duties exceeding 45%. That is effectively wiping out margins. But the pain isn't just coming across the border. The annual allowable cut in Prince George timber supply area has plummeted from a peak of 14.9 million cubic meters during the salvage era to just 6.9 million today. This is not a cyclical dip, it is a structural long-term contraction. We've seen the consequences firsthand. Sinclair Mills has forced to cut production by 40% across Lakeland Mills, Apollo Forest Products, and Achaco Lumber, affecting 350 workers. Canfor has permanently closed the pulp line at Prince George Pulp and Paper Mill, removing 280,000 tons of market kraft pulp capacity. These are not temporary layoffs. This is a permanent structural shift in our local economy. Now let's talk about the energy sector. BC Hydro has signed a memorandum of understanding with KC Lysim's band, a key step towards securing a major customer for the Northern Coastal Transmission Line. The North Coast Transmission Line is a new 500 kilovolt electrical transmission line running from Prince George to Terrace, designed to unlock up to $50 billion in critical mineral investment in the Golden Triangle. Cedar LNG is a $4.6 billion project and the world's first indigenous majority-owned floating LNG facility. KC Lysim's LNG is a $10 billion export terminal whose pipeline corridors runs directly through Regional District of Fraser-Fort George, providing equity opportunities for 15 First Nations and driving regional construction contracts. This is helping Prince George unemployment rate, which sat at 5.2% in February 2026, despite everything happening in forestry. Although these energy projects are happening across BC, there are fly-in and fly-out employment situations, and there are local businesses that are getting supported from these projects. The city is not a single resource town anymore. It is the vascular system for British Columbia's entire energy and mineral export strategy. What this means for real estate is the buyer profile has shifted. The traditional mill worker is being replaced by specialized trades, engineers, and public sector healthcare workers. And the healthcare workers is going to increase even more when we build our new acute healthcare center. The BC provincial budget is injecting $2.8 billion into the healthcare system, and Prince George is getting a large portion of this as the regional hub, which absorbs a significant portion of that hiring. These are stable professional incomes providing property demand. But enough about the global, federal, and provincial economy. Let's bring this to the neighborhood level in Prince George, because the aggregate stats only tell part of the story. This is a split market, and two neighborhoods are doing two completely different things right now. College Heights has roughly 13,000 residents across 5,000 households, and 85 to 87% of those are owner-occupied. This is one of the highest owner-occupant rates in the city. People who buy here stay here. Combined with limited inventory and a housing stock that is roughly 80% single detached homes, you are getting exactly what the data shows. Steady, persistent price appreciation with very low volatility and close proximity to the big box stores. While College Heights, though, it serves as a stabilizer. We go over and we look at heritage, and that represents the value play. This neighborhood is defined by its central geography and high connectivity. Everywhere in city, because you're in the center, is around a 15-minute drive, making it a logistical hub for Prince George. The housing stock consists primarily of aging, original single-family homes, which creates a specific opportunities for buyers to find undervalued assets. Because these properties are supported by strong core neighborhood fundamentals and are located near new infrastructure, they possess significant upside potential. Within College Heights, there is a pricing divide worth knowing about right now, though. Original 1970s construction versus modernized 1990s builds. The gap between these two cohorts has widened in 2026. If you're buying in College Heights, that is where your due diligence needs to be focused. Understanding what you are actually getting into for the price difference between these two eras of construction is critical. Jumping back over to heritage, the big opportunity right now is what I'm calling the boomer time capsule. Aging single-family homes that are undervalued relative to the neighbor's actual fundamentals, but well taken care of from a structural standpoint. Boomers service their furnaces. They take care of the windows. They take care of these large asset costs to protect the houses. So a lot of times you're going into these, changing the paint in the kitchen, but you're not worried about the roof, the furnace, and the deck. Buy the outdated home in a solid neighborhood at the right price. Do the strategic renovations and create equity instead of waiting for the market to hand it to you. All right, here's the piece I promised you at the top of the video. In a hot market, the dollar spread between an entry-level home and a premium move-up home gets stretched wide. Everyone is competing. Prices run across the board, and that gap between the $400,000 starter and the $700,000 family home becomes expensive to bridge. In a stabilizing market, which is exactly what 2026 is, that spread compresses. Premium properties do not collapse, but the relative cost of upsizing improves because the gap between entry level and move up narrows. Right now, buyers can move up from an entry-level home into a premium move-up property and are saving an estimated $40,000 in relative value compared to what that same upgrade cost at peak market differentials. That is not a permanent window, as the energy economy continues absorbing displaced labor and population stabilizes, and the acute healthcare center brings in new labor and employees. That spread will widen again. Add the Bill C4 rebate on top, and if you are a first-time buyer targeting a new build in the move-up tier, the 5% structural discount is essential, a built-in equity position on day one. You're not waiting for the market to give you equity. You walk in with it. The BC Real Estate Association, BCREA, projects the northern area's values rising a modest sustainable 2.6% over 2026 to an average of approximately $455,000. That's not explosive, but it's stable. It is predictive, and for buyers making data-driven decisions right now, stable and predictive is exactly what you want. That is the play for 2026, not speculation, not panic buying, surgical, data-driven decision-making with a clear understanding of what the market is doing and why. When you're looking at navigating the Prince George real estate market, it doesn't have to be stressful. I have a free seller's guide if you're planning to list, and a relocation guide for anyone moving to Prince George. But if you're looking to buy and want more tailored information, ask for my home buyers program. On top of the buyer's guide, I'll send you exclusive weekly videos and emails to walk you through the process step by step. Just comment the word guide below, tell me which one fits your situation, and I'll send the link right over. And when you're ready to actually look at homes or list your property, the easiest way to connect is to call, text, or email. All those details are in the description. Thanks for watching today, and I hope that you got some value out of this. See you in the next video.